Hello everyone, welcome back to another Ableton tutorial. Lovely to have you here. Big shout out all the new Patreon members. The support over there makes a difference. Patreon members, of course, can download the entire Ableton set from today's explorations. A big shout out everyone getting involved on YouTube. Also liking, commenting, subscribing. It does make a difference. Means a lot. Thank you. Good to have you here. Okay, let's dive in. So, the title of today's video, the Disintegration Looper. This is an idea based on some work of William Basinki. William Basinski's album, The Disintegration Loops. If you are not familiar with this album, go and give it a listen. It's fantastic. But basically, it's essentially a short fragment of music, like I think a minute. Somebody can correct me on that in the comments. It's about a minute and it repeats for an hour, except each time the music repeats, it's a little bit more, well, disintegrated. That's where the name comes from. It's a little bit more dissolved. It's a little bit more falling apart. And I wanted to explore a way that we could do that inside of Ableton. But I wanted to have a bit of control over some of the parameters, such as how it's degrading, how long each loop is. You may have seen me plinking and plonking and twiddling some dials up in the top corner there. Just playing some stuff whilst I was talking. Well, to be honest, I actually played it before I was talking. I can't talk and play to this level. Okay, right, let's dive in. So, first of all, let's explore the concept. Mainly today is what I'm going to be looking at a lot of sort of very modular synthy approach to routing signals, splitting signals, taking copies of signals, thinking about where we send those things and how we control them. Hopefully, even if you're not trying to make this sort of bleepity bloopy kind of music, you find some cool signal routing stuff that you can apply to your own work. If there are easier ways to do some of the stuff that I'm doing today, drop a note in the comments. And I'm going to be doing quite a bit of problem solving today. So I'm going to be talking through the ways I think about solving problems inside of Ableton when I want to do something and it's not quite obvious how to do it. So we're gonna delete everything and we're going to start from scratch. I'm going to delete you. Going to delete these, send return tracks over here. I'll talk about them a bit later. The only thing that I'm going to start with is this synthesizer because we don't need to do sound design today. And that sounds like that. It's a synth. It doesn't have any looping or anything else happening. Right. Deep breath. So the first thing we might think to do is to use an echo effect because that's sort of what we're looking at today. But if I bring in Ableton's echo effect, we notice that when sync is turned on, we have a maximum of 1 bar of echoes. And when sync is turned off, that becomes a maximum of 2.5 seconds. And we want much more time than that. We want much longer loops to disintegrate and be coming back at us and swimming in. So thanks for trying echo, but I think today we're going to need to use Ableton's looper. So I'm going to bring looper in on top of our synthy thing channel. You're not doing anything at the moment. And we're going to just explore a couple of things about how this works. So this is not a tutorial about looper. There's many other awesome things about that. And this plugin is super cool. You can do some really great stuff with it. Go and check those out. I am going to be talking through the parameters that we're going to use today though. So what we need to know today is that this big button tells the looper that you want it to do something, record, play, whatever that is. When you tell it to do that, the looper will listen to the global quantization and then it will do things. In this case, it's set to record for X numbers of bars and then is now currently set to then overdub. So to re-record over the top of that, we could change this to record for 1 bar and then just play back. Let's see what happens if I do that. Now I've got the input output set to always. Now what that means is that any incoming signal is allowed to pass through looper without being affected. So that's kind of what we want for now. So we can still hear the synth that I'm playing. You can see me plinking and plonking away here on the MIDI keyboard. So if I now hit go on this, what's going to happen is Ableton is going to record for 1 bar and then it's just going to play that back. So you'll see me playing and then I'll stop playing and it will be coming from the looper. So you can hear that the looper has grabbed 1 bar of audio and it's now just going to keep playing that back and keep playing that back exactly how it recorded it. So it's sort of halfway between an echo and a sampler now, I guess. Okay, thanks, stop. Now, if I change this to record for 1 bar and then overdub, what it's going to do is it's going to record for 1 bar, and then it's going to play that back as we just heard, but then it's also going to record whatever I'm playing on top, and then play that back, and then play that back. So we have notes on notes on notes on notes on notes. You know what? I'm going to add a limiter to the master channel already today because I feel things might get out of control. Okay, so now when I press record here, it's going to record the incoming signal, play it back. I just described it. Let's experience it. Playing back the note, and now if I add an extra note, that's also going to be played back and played back. And if I add another extra note, and it's going to keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that until I tell it to stop. Let's clear the recorded bit here. Now, at the moment, what's happening is 100% of the output signal from the looper is being fed back into the input signal in the looper. If I reduce this feedback to 0%, what that's going to do is the incoming signal is going to be let through, input to output always. It's going to record it, and then it's going to play it back, but it's going to let 0% of its own signal go back to the input. So now it's just going to play it back once. So when I hit this, and you hear that it doesn't let any of the recorded signal come back through. So now, if I did the same as before, if I keep playing notes, what we're going to get is a very, very simple 1 bar delay. Oh, I should mention today, I'm up at 200 BPM, just in case you're trying to replicate what I'm doing following along and it doesn't sound quite the same. Maybe check your BPMs, mate. Check your BPMs. Okay, so now I'm going to hit record here. It's going to record it for 1 bar. It's going to then loop that. 0% of that loopback signal is going to come through. But if I keep playing notes, it's going to function like a simple delay. So now it's functioning as a very simple delay with 1 iteration, 1 feedback. So what I want to be able to do in order to disintegrate the sound is to get something in here, in between where it sends the output signal from the looper and in here. And I want to be able to change where the looper is taking signal from. So we're going to delete that from our Synthy Thing channel, and we're going to bring in a looper on a new channel of its own. I'm going to put that over here. Now, we want to tell this looper to still be taking the same audio signal. So on this audio channel, I want to select audio from Synthy Thing. I want to enable monitor input. Now, in this case, we want to make sure input to output is set to never because I have the clean audio signal coming out of the Synthy Thing channel. I don't need it duplicated and coming out of this looper channel. But now essentially looper is going to function in exactly the same way. If I set this to 1 bar and set this to play, what's going to happen is the audio signal is now coming out of here and back into the audio channel, and exactly as we experienced before, the looper is now just on a separate channel. So everything else like that is going to function as before. Now, I want to be able to overdub. So I'm going to change this to overdub here. And I need to make sure we turn the feedback down to 0 as well. Now, we want to find some kind of a way of intercepting this audio signal here. And we're going to do that. We could do that using an audio channel, or we could do that using a send return channel. Today I'm going to use send return, so I'm going to create, maybe this is off screen and you don't see it, we're going to insert return track, and the return track comes up over here. And let's label some of these things now. Labeling is going to be very important today in order to keep ourselves organized. So we're going to call this, that's Command R to rename 1 bar loop. And we're going to relabel this 1 bar loop back, LB for loop back. Now, you may have used send and return tracks as sort of reverb sends or delay sends. And they go straight to the master channel. We can tell them to not go straight to the master channel. We can tell them to go to the 1 bar loop channel. So now what that means is that anything that comes into this send return channel is now going to be sent back to the input of the 1 bar loop channel. So if I send it to itself like this, now we come here, we press record, and I've got overdub on. So it's going to play the signal once coming out of the synthy thing, go into the 1 bar loop. It's going to record that and play it back, but it's only going to play it once. But it's also sending it via this send here to this channel, which is then also going to feed it back into the looper, which is then going to play it back. And so we're going to create an endless loop between these two channels. So if I hit this, so now we can see the signal is coming into the return channel here. It's creating an endless loop between these two. And this send here is now going to function the same as this feedback here. If we thought about the feedback as the percentage, the volume of the outgoing signal being fed back in, we can control that percentage here. And you see it functions in exactly the same way. If this was down at 0, we're going to get 0 input signal. In this case, we're able to sort of, now it functions like a sort of, again, we're still looking basically like a delay, right? I'm just going to leave this rolling for now. It's just continually recording nothing over itself. And let's turn you up to here. So now we've intercepted the signal in between the output of the looper and the input of the looper, but we've essentially kept the looper's functions with this send button. So now we can do stuff to the signal in between it going out and coming back in. So let's, for instance, if we put an EQ8 on here, and let's just do some sort of fairly, let's go some fairly basic filtering like this. So now we think about what's happening to the signal. I play it, it comes out of the main synthy thing channel and out of the main output. It also goes into the 1 bar looper, which is then going to play it back once and play that to the output. And then it goes into the 1 bar loopback situation over here, which is then going to filter it and send it back here, which is going to send it out to the mains, but then also out here, and it's going to filter it. So it's going to constantly get more and more filtered, is essentially what I'm saying. I'm going to play a note. So you can hear that note each time it's repeated is now getting more and more filtered. If we could bring this down. And it's disappearing into nothingness. So now we have a way to control effectively the decay, the feedback, as we're calling it. We call it, the feedback. We have a way to control the feedback, and we have a way to manipulate the signal. Now, you may have noticed that when I play the note, we also got sort of one very clean delay. As the delay started, it sort of took hearing two versions of the note until it began to degrade. Let's look at that again. So one clean, and now it starts to be filtered and dripping out. So now we can tell the 1 bar loop, actually, no, we don't want you to take audio from Synthy Thing anymore. We want you to take audio from no input. But Synthy Thing, we want to send you to the 1 bar loopback situation. So now the signal is coming out of here, it's going into the mains. The send is sending 50% of the signal into the loopback, which is sending it to the looper, which is sending it to the loopback, which is sending it to the loop. So now we've solved that problem of the first iteration being super clean. So now this is our amount of signal, amount of feedback, amount of loops. Is that doing what I wanted to do? I felt like that stopped, and it shouldn't have stopped. We need to make sure that this we need to make sure that this send is, of course, also up. Otherwise, we don't get the infinity loop happening, of course. So now it's just repeating, and it's going to continue repeating, but slowly becoming more and more filtered. If we were to do something like put a reverb in here, then we're going to get a situation a little bit like Alvin Lucia's I Am Sitting in a Room. So the signal's going to come in, but it's going to get more and more reverbed according to this filtering. Reverbs on reverbs on reverbs on reverbs on reverbs on reverbs. And eventually that will devolve into just becoming, if we have this all the way up at 100%, of course, that will now just become a feedback, a reverb feedback note. We could probably actually play that note if we did something like this. Yeah, we can change that note. That's fun. That's a little aside. Let's undo those things. and bring this back. I did another whole video about feedback if you're interested in exploring that. Okay, so let's examine again where we're at. We can play a note, we can control the amount of that getting sent into the one bar loop situation, and we can control how many iterations it's going to take to go through, and we can control things like the reverb and the EQ8. So what I'm going to do now is build an effects rack inside this loopback situation. This is where the disintegrating is happening, and I'm going to put a couple of effects in here and make some macros. So reverb is of course a nice thing, EQ is of course a nice thing, perhaps something like vinyl distortion will also be a nice thing. This we're going to have to be very, very subtle with, and perhaps just some kind of pitch fluctuation thing. So let's use the shifter, and we're going to use an LFO to modulate just the fine tuning. This is going to make it sound this is going to sound pretty crazy right now. Yeah, you can hear that modulating the pitch. We probably want that to be a bit slower. And the depth here is going to be the amount that the pitch is getting modulated. And we probably want that to go both ways, yeah. So now depth is at 0, no modulation. So now we can hear that the pitch sort of fluctuating a little bit here, maybe a little bit faster. Okay, so now I've got some things that I want to add to some macros to make sort of a performable effects rack. So I'm just gonna select all of this, select all, Command G. Open up don't need you. Open up the macros here, and let's connect some macros. So obviously something like high pass and low pass is going to be really nice to be able to control. So we're just going to hit map. Let's call that high pass filter. Let's do the same with low pass here. Frequency is what we want to control. LPF, low pass filter, lovely. Okay, thanks for coming. Now we want to control the amount of this distortion, but it's super intense this when we start getting lots of delays. So we're going to connect there to here, but let's constrain the range a bit so it only goes up to maybe 0.15. That will be nice. Shifter, we want to be able to control how much that pitch is happening. So I'm going to map the depth here to here. So let's call this pitch flux, lovely. That's that. And of course, just a wet dry on the reverb. So now I can play a note in. I can control all these parameters from here. Now, this presents another problem, is that I don't want to go menu diving. If I'm over here on my synthy thing or one bar loop, I don't want to have to suddenly open up all the effects over here just to get to these macros. So I want to maybe map all of these macros onto something that's on my synthy thing channel, so I can just keep playing the synthy thing. I could, of course, map each of these to MIDI controller here, but we're gonna add that step one step later. So let's call this loopback effects. Now this was a problem-solving thing for me, and so the way I'm going to do this is I want to have an effects rack in here that has a bunch of macros on it that can control stuff inside this loopback thing, so that effectively it's one instrument. It's not me diving across a whole project. And the way I'm going to do that is using LFOs, because of course a macro, I can't set a macro on this channel, on the synthy thing channel, to control something directly on another channel. But LFOs helpfully allow us to map things on other channels across Ableton. So if I click map on this, you can see I can now go to this channel. I can hit this, and we can see that this parameter is now being controlled by this LFO. Now, obviously, we probably don't just want it doing this kind of filter sweep like this. It's not particularly useful to us. So how can we make this a discrete volume? How do I make it so that it's not LFOing, but that it is just a volume that I can use to control something? Well, we can turn the depth down to 0, and now we have an offset here, and this offset moves this line up and down. So if I move this offset to minus 81%, we can see here the high pass filter that it's controlling is down around there. If I come back here, turn the offset right up, that high pass filter is now turned right up. So we can do this with a bunch of LFOs over on this channel. But if I don't, once again, have to go menu diving through a bunch of LFOs, I want macros. So if I group this now, I open up the macros control on here and I select map. I can map this offset to this dial. Now, this dial is now controlling the high pass filter cutoff. So I'm going to relabel that high pass filter, and we're going to relabel this so that we know what this is controlling. So we've now created an LFO that actually has a discrete value. I'm going to change this to remote instead of a modulating thing. So now this is just a discrete value on the high pass filter that I can control from this macro here. And if I right click, I think I want that to show generic value instead of percentage. Yeah, lovely. I've left these two free because perhaps I want to do something involving the feedback amount on there. Now, I want to be able to control these amounts from this macro. So again, let's bring an LFO in. Let's put it before here. Let's turn this to remote. Let's map you to here. And that's going up and down. I'm going to open up this and we're going to turn this to remote again. And we're going to map that same dial to you. Now, again, let's turn the depth down. So now I have a controllable discrete value that is effectively controlling my feedback amount. So again, let's map that offset over here, offset to here, and let's call this feedback. So I'm now developing a way that I can control the parameters, both feedback parameters and parameters inside this effect track that I built from one macro control. It's all there in front of me. So I'm going to do a bit more mapping. Enjoy. Well, I'll probably speed this bit up. I think that's probably a good idea. Okay, after all that fast forwarding and mapping, I now have a controller, labeled controller, on my synth thingy channel. And from this controller, I can control the feedback amount. I can control the filters and the pitch flux and the verb and the distortion inside the FX Rack that we made over here. So that's, all of a sudden, this becomes a lot more playable because I don't have to go menu diving. And I can just control it all from inside here in the controller. Okay, so the question now, how can I have different length loops? Of course, we saw that we can change the length of the recording here, but that is going to add in bits of silence. And if I play a loop that's 1 bar, I want that to continue being 1 bar and then be able to add a 2 bar long loop on top or a 4 bar loop on top of that. So we're going to do some more routing. We're going to throw the audio more places. More places. So I'm going to duplicate this 1 bar loop channel, Command D. We're going to relabel that straight away. We're going to call that 2 bar loop. I'm going to change this to record for 2 bars. I'm going to duplicate this section over here. Command D. We're going to label this 2 bar loop back. We're going to make sure this 2 bar loop is enabled. We want to change this to going to the 2 bar loop. We want to change that to the track in. Yes, we want to make sure that 2 bar loop is input enabled. So now, we're going to need to redo some mapping as well. So I'm going to, where's our feedback? This is our feedback. I didn't label it. So I'm going, already this feedback is controlling these two. I want to make sure it's controlling this one as well. Reason being, this A signal is sending signal to our 1 bar loop feedback. So even if I have the 2 bar loop playing, that's just going to be sending it into the 1 bar loop, which is then going to be coming back out here. So we're going to just be ending up with 1 bar loops. But 2 bar loop, I want to send you to the 2 bar loop back thing. So that anything that comes into the 2 bar looper channel creates the infinity loop with the 2 bar loop back situation. So I want to be able to control this parameter with my feedback parameter here in the controller. Now, that controller is controlling the fixed signal that we made on this LFO. And this LFO, helpfully, I can map to another place. So I'm going to map this LFO to here. I want to make sure that that is on remote. And so now the same LFO is controlling all of these loopback situations. But you probably noticed a problem there. Our solution to one thing has created a problem to another thing, which is that this feedback is sending input signal only, again, to the loopback channel, not to only loopback 1 bar channel, sorry, not loopback 2 bar channel. So I want to be able to control that. I don't want to have to be diving again, using menus, using sends. I want this to all be fairly simple. So we're not going to use the sends on the synth thingy channel to control this. We're going to unmap that. And we're going to set up some more audio routing. So we're going to unmap that. We're going to bring in another audio channel, Command T. And this audio channel is going to be sent to the 1 bar loop channel. So we're going to relabel this channel 1 bar send. So we now need to tell this 1 bar send where we want it to take audio from. Now we could, of course, just say synthy thing, but then we're going to have the same problem that we, of course, want to enable audio input. But now we're having the same problem, is that if we set up another one of these, 2 bar send, and we tell that to only go to the 2 bar send. Now the audio signal is being sent into both of these, and so we're just doubling up. It's not quite solving the problem. So we need to be able to split the audio signal inside this synthy thing channel. So the way we're going to do that is by making a dummy utility group. So I'm just going to bring in a utility. This utility is not going to do anything. We're going to hit Command G, and we're going to open this up, and we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to label these. Surprise, 1 bar, 2 bar, and we're going to make it a dry channel as well. And we're just going to label this splitter. Some audio has come from somewhere. It's incredibly spooky. What happened? Let's turn the feedback down. That will stop that. I must have accidentally, or I must have triggered a tiny bit of audio when I added an extra channel. Okay, so we're calling that the splitter. And now if we go to this 1 bar send channel, we can see that synthy thing, yes, audio, we want to take audio from synthy thing. But in this drop-down menu, we can select where in that whole chain we want to take the audio. So we can select, we want to take it from the 1 bar splitter, 1 bar post effects. And on this channel, same thing, except we want to take from the splitter 2 bar post effects. So now this channel, our 1 bar send, is sending audio to our 1 bar loopback situation, but it's only going to receive audio from this channel here. The 2 bar send is sending audio via send B to our 2 bar loopback over here, but it is only taking audio out of the 2 bar send over here. Now we know that we can use splitters like this and chain selectors to decide where the incoming signal goes. So if we open up the chain selector here, and I move these across, now we have a situation where if the audio comes in here, it's just hitting chain selection 0, and that's going straight to the output. It's not being sent to either the 1 bar, either this 1 bar send extra audio channel, which would then go to the 1 bar loop and continue looping, and it's not being sent to the 2 bar extra send channel, which would then go to the 2 bar loop back over here, and see it's only being sent to the output. Here we're sending it to the 1 bar and to the 2 bar. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add that to a macro. Open up macros. We're going to hit map. We're going to hit this thing, and we're going to map that to there. And we want to make sure we constrain the range. So it only goes from 0 to. So now when I move the chain selector around, you can see this moving, which is changing where the output signal is being sent, which is then changing whether or not any of these are receiving signal, etc., etc. So again, let's connect that macro to this macro. This is going to enable us to control where the signal's going. So how do we do that? Well, we can just drag this whole splitter thing inside that controller channel. Now when I hit map, change selector, now we have a change selector from 0 to 1 to 2. So now we have a way of saying how long is the loop, where is everything connected to. We have a way of, we didn't solve this yet. We need to be able to control this feedback. And again, we don't need the splitter anymore. We're doing that using this feedback LFO. This feedback LFO value is being controlled by this knob here, but we can say where it is going using this extra mapping. So we want to make sure we connect it to this send. So we're going to come back here. We're going to hit map. We're going to connect you to you, and we're going to come back here. We're going to hit map. We're going to connect you to you. Make sure that's on remote. So now the feedback is controlling the amount of signal that is being sent to the 1-bar or the 2-bar loops. The change selector is saying which of those loops the incoming audio signal is being sent to, and we can control all the parameters here. So at this point, let's try some things. let's see if that's all working. So we've got the change selector set to 0. So at this point, we're going to get no loops. We're just going to get the incoming signal. That's correct. If I change this change selector to 1, it's now being sent to the 1-bar send, which is going to create a 1-bar infinity loop. Let's reset all of these. So we don't want any reverb, no pitch fluctuation, no distortion. We're just checking if it's working. So we should get a 1-bar loop here. And now if I change this to 2, we should get a 2-bar loop on top of that. We didn't. Why did that not happen? What is going wrong there? Right, welcome back. Welcome back after a little troubleshooting, which turned out to be very boring in terms of a YouTube content situation. The situation was that I hadn't mapped all of these controlling parameters to the macros on the 2-bar loopback channel that we added, because we just duplicated it. I say we, I'm lumping you in with me. It was me. I did it. I own that mistake. And we were getting a 2-bar loop, but the parameters were set so that we couldn't actually hear it. Okay, so now let's check that again. So we have change selector 0. That's just the dry signal. That's just the dry signal. Let's turn the feedback up. Change selector 1 is going to give us a 1-bar loop with quite quiet feedback. Oh, I did a loop a little LFO tweaking there, and that of course then becomes part of the loop, which is really nice. Now change selector 2. This should give me a 2-bar loop. Again, after a little bit of problem solving, the situation was that the looper on the 2-bar loop was not actually doing anything. It wasn't going. We hadn't set it to go again because we just duplicated the channel. So I'm going to clear and I'm going to press record. And now that is going to be recording a 2-bar loop of whatever comes into it. This one is also now already recording a 1-bar loop of whatever comes into it. So I said there was going to be some problem solving, didn't I? Okay, so now we have a change selector. We have the dry signal. We can make a 1-bar loop and a 2-bar loop on top. And we have all of these lovely parameters that we can play with. So there you go. The part that you heard me playing at the start, I'd basically done this, but with more loops and some more effects and some more mapping. There was a lot of mapping and a lot of routing today, so I didn't want to go. I didn't want to keep doing that and bore you all to death. So that's the concept. This is the idea of making a sort of disintegration looper that allows you to continue transforming the loop as each iteration comes back at you. It gives you some control over the things from one controller. So we solved a few problems today. I hope you made some friends along the way. Stop talking. Thanks for being here. See you next time.